All right, welcome back everyone to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're jumping into something a bit different, using some recently declassified documents, not really about the JFK assassination itself, though they're from those releases.
Right, these are more like a side window, a look into the covert world back in the early 70s.
Exactly. We're talking intelligence operations, the people involved, their sort of day-to-day, their training, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's less about the big headlines and more about the texture of it all, the human element, the practicalities.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really pull out the interesting nuggets from these files. We've got a contact report on someone called MPTROICA 7,
With the code name.
isn't it?
Mind you back.
And then a separate dispatch about some Timothy Lolita documents. We're going to try to piece together what these tell us about that hidden world.
Sounds good. The main sources are, like you said, that MPTROICA 7 report. It's a CISO summary and contact report from March 72.
So.
Clandestine information and support operations. Gives you an idea.
Okay.
And then this other dispatch from May 71 about the Leahy documents. It's kind of an odd pairing, but let's see what's there.
Okay, let's start with MPTR ICA 7. The main document is this contact report from February 72, written by a W.E. Gava.
Mm-hmm.
And right at the start, it says, meetings happened in New York City and Northern Virginia under secure conditions.
Right. And no security incidents noted.
What does that little phrase tell you about how things were run? Or maybe about MPTR ICA 7?
Well, it's brief, but it says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests, careful planning, counter-surveillance, and that MPTOICA 7, or M7 as they call them sometimes, knew what they were doing, followed procedure. It wasn't just a casual chat, it was controlled.
Okay, so serious business. And inside these secure meetings, we get this picture of M7 doing all sorts of things, like trying really hard to join a pro-Mao study group.
Yeah, persistent efforts, the report says.
Yeah.
Even bugging the manager of the China bookstore until he finally broke down, apparently.
Okay. And eventually, M7 links up with a local U.S.-China Friendship Association group, led by a Mrs. Susan Warren, a.k.a. Frank.
And this is interesting. M7 thinks they hit it off with this Mrs. Warren because of dialectics.
Dialectics, like philosophy.
Yeah, but more than that, it's a way of arguing, analyzing, used a lot in Marxist thought. Mastering that would be crucial for someone trying to fit into or influence a pro-Mao group.
Okay, so it's a tool.
Exactly. And the goal was clear. Develop a social business relationship with Warren and report back to classmates, which suggests, a structured training or operational group.
Right, makes sense. And speaking of study, M7 was also formally enrolled at the New School for Social Research,
The graduate faculty.
taking comparative legal systems, covering law in China, Vietnam, Germany, the U.S., the Soviet Union. Pretty broad.
And planning to take French, too.
How does that kind of academic work fit into, well, spycraft?
It's smart, isn't it? Provides excellent cover, obviously. But it's also genuine preparation. Understanding legal systems, languages, that's vital if you're operating internationally or observing foreign groups. Gives you real analytical depth.
So not just cover. Got it. Then there's this bit about Ramparts tours, women's tour. M7 brings it up.
Yeah, a trip planned by a Mr. Jason Horn. London, Paris, Rome.
And the Paris stop was specifically to meet the North Vietnamese, the DRV peace delegation.
Right. Scheduled for May or June 72.
M7 was worried about the cost at first, like $600.
But was told, basically, don't worry about the money, they could cover it.
Then the worry shifted to it messing up a planned move, a PCS departure to D.C.
Permit change of station, yeah. Job relocation.
But M7 figured they'd get put on the tour anyway if it was of operational interest.
And that phrase, operational interest, that's the key, isn't it? Why would joining a tour to meet peace delegates be operationally interesting?
Good question. Maybe the tour itself was cover, or a chance to gather intel directly.
Could be. Or influence things, maybe. Monitor the talks. It shows M7 juggling their cover life with potential mission demands.
And they weren't just studying or traveling, they were contributing too. To this newsletter, Southeast Asia Reports, SEER.
Yeah, from the NYU Student Mobilization Committee, M7 gave them a copy of the first issue.
And it was listed as staff. 1 of 5 contributors, had an article coming out in the next issue.
So really embedding themselves, building credentials within these groups, getting insights from the inside.
But the most maybe revealing part is the mention of actual covert training and assessment.
By the Psychological Assessment Branch of TSD Technical Services Division.
The tech guys, the gadget guys.
And Psychological Ops Assessment, yeah. This training was codenamed JBLMUBS,
Took place in a safe house in North Arlington, Virginia. M7 was introduced as Miss Julie.
Right. And this Mr. Andy Ness, who was also linked somehow to Susan Warren, spent an afternoon teaching M7 more about dialectics.
So specific training tailored to interacting with that pro-Mao group, potentially?
Looks like it. Not just philosophy, but strategic communication. How to analyze arguments, find weaknesses, steer the conversation. Classic operative skills for that kind of target environment.
Okay, so that brings us back to Susan Warren, a.k.a. Susan Frank. The leader of that study group M7 was so focused on.
Yeah, there's a separate little assessment of her, also from Feb 72.
And it's quite the description, calls her a tough cookie.
With a complete lack of interest in anyone but herself. Ouch.
And her method. She'd ask things like, what do you think Mao meant when he said this?
But then, after you answered, she'd just tell you her interpretation. Exactly what she means to say, with no enthusiasm.
Doesn't sound very welcoming.
No. Self-assured, maybe dogmatic. A challenging person to build rapport with, you'd think?
But she was seen as a real China expert. The report says it was obvious within the first 8 minutes of class.
And get this detail. She apparently spoke to soldiers in Yunnan who fired on peasants.
Wow. That's specific and dark.
It really is. It says she has a solid understanding of Chinese political line and can smoothly defend Chinese history.
So formidable. But then it gets into personal quirks. Concerned about money, dressed conservatively, but wanted to break away and try new things.
But crucially, not new ideas in politics.
Huh. Okay. Also notes she had a nice figure and knew it. And her voice.
Yeah, deep, slow, and even and artificially cultured. Dropping her H's apparently, saying Vedi or America.
You can almost hear it, can't you? They even mention fidgety hands and thick and yellowish thumbnails.
The level of detail is kind of stunning.
It really is. Down to fingernails. What does that tell you about how agencies back then approached understanding people, whether they were targets or assets?
It shows an incredible focus on human intelligence, human and psychological profiling. Every little detail was seen as potentially significant. Well, it could reveal vulnerabilities, habits, how someone might react under stress. It's about building a complete picture, understanding the whole person, not just their political views, for recruitment or handling or counter-ops.
Right, building that mosaic you mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
Okay, so these vivid details really bring M7 and Susan Warren to life. But the documents also cover the practical stuff for M7.
Yeah, the admin side.
Like salary advances. $500 in February 72 for January salary. Another $200 for the new school and French classes.
There was some kind of accounting problem mentioned related to the D.C. area move.
But M7 thought they'd received everything they were owed. They even got a notice about tax changes, legislative pay increase, hospitalization premiums.
It's almost mundane, isn't it? But it really underscores that these operatives, even deep cover ones perhaps, are still part of a bureaucracy.
Right. Payroll, expenses, taxes.
It suggests this wasn't just a one-off gig. It points towards a more formal, long-term relationship with the agency.
But then, bang, back to the clandestine. A telepouch dispatch to Bangkok.
Secure electronic message.
Proposing M7 be assigned there. For housekeeping purposes initially, but with a regional mission.
So, likely heading for Southeast Asia. That regional mission, maybe leveraging the academic background, the China focus, seems like a career progression.
And then this is classic spy stuff. M7 asks for a concealment device for microdot viewer.
Wow. Okay. Microdots. Tiny little photos of documents, basically. You need a special viewer.
And they wanted a way to hide the viewer.
Yeah, and also plan to ask TSD, the tech division, for other concealment devices. For general use, storing papers, funds.
That really brings it home, doesn't it? The practical tools of the trade. Needing secret compartments.
Definitely. It speaks to the risk, the need for intense security. They were handling or expecting to handle very sensitive things.
Okay, that microdot request is a great detail. So from that really granular picture of M7's life and tradecraft, let's switch gears to the other document, the Timothy Alayege documents. This feels totally different.
Yeah, it's a dispatch from May 71, marked Secret Tribat.
Right at.
It's a code word. Means extremely sensitive handling, usually involving human sources, protecting identities.
Okay. And it's from the Chief European Division to the Chief of Station in Copenhagen.
And the subject is Rybat Micaeus, transmittal of Timothy Leahy's documents. It says it's sending photocopies of Leahy's documents.
So what are these documents? What's in them?
And this is where it gets, well, kind of anticlimactic in a way. The documents are just lists.
Lists of what?
Names, addresses, phone numbers, dense lists. That's it.
No explanation, no context, nothing about who these people are or why Copenhagen needs their detail.
Absolutely nothing in the source material provided, just raw data. We have no idea if they're contacts, targets, leads, nothing.
Wow, just pages of names and numbers. What's the point of collecting data like that, seemingly disconnected? What would an analyst back then do with it?
Well, that's the raw material, isn't it? Intelligence work involves collecting huge amounts of data. These lists could be for network analysis, mapping connections between people, identifying potential recruits maybe, or people to watch, or targets for disinformation. Without context, it's just like a phone book to us.
Right.
But to an analyst then, maybe cross-referencing with other info, each name could be significant. A political figure, a scientist, someone's cousin. You don't know.
So they collect it first and figure out the relevance later.
Often, yeah. You hold on to it, wait for other pieces of the puzzle to show up. It highlights how much intelligence is just patient collection and organization, waiting for the connections to appear.
Okay. So this whole dive has been pretty fascinating. We went from the really intricate, detailed life of MPTRO ICA 7.
Yeah, the studies, the training, the potential tour.
To that almost literary description of Susan Warren.
The tough cookie with the China expertise and the odd voice.
And then landed on these totally opaque lists from Timothy Leary.
It really does show the different facets of intelligence work, doesn't it?
Right.
From deep human profiling and interaction to just mass data collection.
Yeah. And it feels like these little details, these fragments from old files, they give you a much more, I don't know, real sense of it all.
Unvarnished is a good word.
Yeah.
It's not the movie version. It's bureaucratic sometimes. It's detailed observation. It's patience. It's tradecraft like microdots.
So thinking about all this, what's the takeaway from you listening in? Maybe it's this. These pieces, MPTRA7's cover life, those unexplained Leahy lists, they remind us how much history is still hidden.
And how even small, seemingly random bits of information, once they surface, can hint at much bigger, more complex stories underneath.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other connections, what other patterns are still waiting in the archives, waiting to be pieced together? Something to think about.